Hi everyone, this is Satyajit Das, and in this video I'm going to talk about how I made the transition from a Web2 developer to a Web3 developer, also known as a blockchain developer. So little bit of background of my career. So I'm from a mechanical engineering background. I did Bachelor's of Technology from IIT Kharagpur back in India. Then I did a Master's in Mechanical Engineering at École Polytechnique in Paris. I did a Master's thesis at Caltech in California, and after that I did a PhD from Cambridge University in UK. So all of these was in mechanical engineering field. What made me shift from engineering to computer science in general? So during my PhD, I realized that I'm more into computer science than mechanical engineering. So one of the reasons was, if you're trying to make something happen in mechanical engineering, usually you may have to wait for a bit longer. For example, the project I worked on during my PhD, that was a good project. I worked on a particular material, and by the time that material actually gets utilized in real world, it will easily take like 5 to 10 years. But in computer science or in software in general, the advantage is that you can think of an idea. It can be an app idea, or it can be a website idea, or it can be something that solves a problem, and you can actually build it within a matter of weeks and ship it, and people will start using it in a matter of months. So that itself was very exciting for me, and also it always had this problem solving element to it. And during PhD as well, you solve a lot of problems, and in computer science field as well, you still get to solve problems. So these were the reasons my interest kind of shifted to computer science from mechanical engineering. So about halfway through my PhD, it was clear to me that I want to shift to computer science field. So I started teaching myself some aspects of computer science by taking some online courses, or through YouTube or through Udemy. And during that time, I managed to build some games for fun, and that's how I realized I'm actually enjoying the process of building softwares or games in general. So after my PhD, I got a job in a software company as a backend software engineer. So this one had part software and part research element to it. So I was trying to figure out a model for truck routing. So imagine like Google Maps for truck routing. So this is what I did for maybe like 3-4 years, and I enjoyed that. So it was all in Web2 sector, which means like, writing backend software code, sometimes writing front-end software code, and ensuring things run smoothly. If something breaks down, if there is any bug in the code, if the server crashes, then you have to fix it. So all these things, the typical Web2 stuff. So I did them until about 2021. In the beginning of 2021, there was this, when the Bitcoin or blockchain was at its peak of its boom. During that time, I started exploring a bit more about what's the underlying technology behind Bitcoin. So during that time, I started reading a bit more about Bitcoin, especially the Bitcoin white paper and a few more resources. And after going through all of them, it was clear to me that why Bitcoin is so popular and what exactly makes it special and how exactly it fits as an alternative to gold. So basically like a digital gold, which means like a long-term storage of value. Before talking about how exactly I made the transition, let me give a brief overview of how development or software development looks like in the Web3 world. So there are usually two types of jobs when it comes to hands-on technical programming jobs. So one is application level development, the other one is protocol level development. So protocol level means you are working on the actual blockchain, like building of the actual blockchain. So a Web2 equivalent would be the fact that, imagine there are like AWS servers or Google Cloud servers that are running, and you can always deploy any of your website in those servers. So these servers need to be created, maintained. So this is an example of protocol level engineering. So in blockchain, it is sort of similar, but much more nuanced than that, because things are evolving with time. So working on blockchain at the protocol level means actually working on the blockchain node software, which is run by every network participant. So the way you take part in a blockchain is basically you are one of these participants as a node or as a validator, and there might be thousands of other nodes or validators, and all of them participate in the network. So it's not like just Google hosting its server at its data centers. No, it can be these servers, the blockchain servers, they can run across the whole world. world, and anyone can participate in those. So the exact software which they use, that is a protocol engineer gets to work on those softwares. And so the work usually involves like incorporating new features, fixing bugs, and all of this involves like running it locally and checking if your changes are actually working fine. So some aspects of protocol engineering includes consensus, P2P, execution, and few other things. The popular languages are Go, Rust, OCaml, C++. So Bitcoin is written in C++. And then there is application level development. So this includes writing smart contracts and building front-end applications on top of the blockchain applications, which may or may not use smart contract. So these are the applications which the end user actually interacts with. So if you are a Web3 user, you may not directly interact with the blockchain itself, but you may interact with an application which then in turn interacts with the blockchain. So examples of these applications can be like a wallet software. So for example, MetaMask, which is a wallet software, and you can store your blockchain tokens inside MetaMask, and MetaMask interacts with the underlying blockchain. So this is one example. Another example can be if you are playing a Web3 game, and that game itself is an application built on top of blockchains itself. So popular languages as an application developer are Solidity and JavaScript or TypeScript. So anything that's related to front-end development. So how exactly I made the transition? So I have a LinkedIn profile which I keep up to date based on my experience. And by 2021, I already had about 4 years worth of experience in computer science field as a software engineer and a backend engineer. Plus I had the PhD background where a part of my PhD also involved some programming. So I had to write Fortran code to run my models, my physical models. So time to time, I get contacted by recruitment agencies, which are mostly looking for Go developer jobs. At some point in 2021, I was contacted by a recruiter as well. But this time the job was for a Web3 job. So basically a distributed software engineer job. There are various names which they put, so they can name the same job in multiple ways. So it can be like a blockchain engineer or a distributed software engineer, distributed systems engineer, just Go engineer, Geth engineer, but all of them, or it can be protocol software engineer or just protocol engineer as well. But all of them are essentially same as long as you're working at the protocol level. So I got this message from the recruiter and the job description looked perfectly in sync with what I was looking for at that time. And so I decided to go ahead with the interview process. So in my case, in that particular company, there were like 2 stages of interview. So the first stage was like kind of overall discussion about experience and what are the expectations. So that one was with the CTO of the company, and then the second round was more technical in nature, and that one was with the entire tech team, and that probably went on for like 1.5 hours maybe. And they were mostly interested in my knowledge of software in general, knowledge of Go, knowledge of software principles, and little bit of blockchain knowledge. So by that time I had some idea about Bitcoin and why it is important, but yeah, not much of in-depth knowledge. And in this particular case, the company was very quick in making its decision. So basically literally in like 2 or 3 working days it was already decided, and they made me an offer, and then I decided to switch. What is life like as a blockchain developer? So I can mostly talk about how is life as a protocol engineer, but life might be similar as the application software engineer as well. So what are the usual things you are supposed to do as a protocol software engineer or a blockchain engineer in general? So the blockchain software itself, that gets evolved with time as people keep on adding new features on top of it. So one example is in Ethereum, it used to be proof of work. Now it has become proof of stake. So to make that change, developers had to, modify the Ethereum code base and extensively test it and then release it. So when you are working on a particular blockchain software, you may need to do things such as like bug fixes based on the current bugs, or add new features. So if they are minor features, they may not require a hard fork, they may require a soft fork, but if there's a major change to the protocol, then you may need to do a hard fork. So what is a hard fork? So hard fork is something that when you make that programming change into the blockchain software, then it is no longer backwards compatible. So when a hard fork happens in a blockchain network, then every participant has to update to the newest version of that software. So one example is again when Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake, that was a hard fork, because after a certain block number you have to shift to the proof of stake mechanism, and proof of work will no longer work. So my experience has been mostly in the field of go-ethereum. So Ethereum's codebase is open source, which means anyone can fork it, make some changes on top of it, and spin out a new blockchain. And that's what many other blockchain companies have done. There are like maybe hundreds of other blockchains which are built on top of Ethereum, but the underlying code remains very similar or the same as a project called go-ethereum, which is the main code base of Ethereum. So my experience is mostly in go-ethereum, and that is written in Go, of course. So some examples of projects built on top of Ethereum are like BSC, Avalanche, Flare. So these are like some of the top blockchains which are built on top of Ethereum. So normally when you make changes to a blockchain code base, you have to extensively test it. So which means you first run it locally in your laptop, and then probably you submit a transaction to the local blockchain network and see if it's actually going through. So that's the bare minimum basic test one has to do. Once that is done, then you may need to do some integration tests, which maybe some other team members of yours will do. Once all of these tests pass, then there is something called test network, which is different than the main network. So when we talk about Ethereum or Bitcoin, we usually talk about their mainnet or main network. But Ethereum also has like test networks where you first update the code base in the test network, and people are supposed to like bombard it with lots of transactions, or it might be faulty transaction, or just to check if the code holds up, so to ensure there are no bugs. And once it is ensured that there are no bugs in a test network, then the release happens in a main network. Apart from the technical side of things, most of the protocol engineering jobs are usually remote in nature, so the working hours are generally very flexible, and in many cases, yeah, your teammates are probably outside of the country, so you only have to ensure you are making it to the calls, but when exactly you are working, that's entirely up to you. How exactly you can make a shift from Web 2 to Web 3 like me? It boils down to essentially two things what the recruiters look for. So it's either how good is your Web 2 knowledge, or how good is your blockchain knowledge, or a combination of it essentially. So you may be an excellent Web 2 software engineer, so you know basic software engineering design principles, and you can write backend software or front-end software code very easily, but you may not have that good of an experience in blockchain, or vice versa. And based on what the company is looking for, they may choose whether to hire you or not. So usually if you are very good at least one of them, your chances are very good. Some companies, they strictly look for a very in-depth knowledge of blockchain, because what they are looking for is not too much of code, but maybe too much of problem-solving skills. For that, you may need to have very in-depth blockchain knowledge. Even though blockchain is just like a 10-11-year-old sector, but it has like a lot of technologies which have been built. So it can be anything between like consensus mechanism, execution mechanisms. It can be zero knowledge proofs or L1, L2, multi-chain, cross-chain, interoperability, smart contracts, smart contract security. There are so many things inside blockchain sector already, even though it's just a 10-year-old sector. So having a very good in-depth knowledge of things really helps. But at the same time, if you don't have it, then yeah, if you are expected to be very good at Web 2 technologies at least. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to make another video on how exactly you can make the transition from Web 2 to Web 3. In this video, I have only talked about my experience. I can make another video with tips on how to make the transition. Thank you.